Hello, and welcome to a special election edition of Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. I'm Ben Max, Executive Editor of Gotham Gazette. My co-hosts with me today are Democratic Strategist L. Williams and Republican Strategist Richard St. Paul. We have a little more than 2 months left before the presidential election in November, and we wanted to take a focused look at the policies of each of the two major party candidates, Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump. I'm going to start with you, L. Joy. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
L. Joy, is there a policy focus to the election right now? And if yes, what do you see as the major points? And if no, why is that, or where are we heading here?
Yeah, this election cycle is a little unprecedented, as we know. For myself, I don't think we fully reached a full policy point of this election cycle. I had hoped when we got to the conventions that the tide would have turned. We would have heard some detail of policy proposals from all those in the election, and then begin to turn to sort of really dig in deep. Unfortunately, I think that we're in a time where people want to hear the sound bites and the sort of the big ideas. Mm-hmm. One particular candidate does have details of their proposed policies and issues, not only on their website, but sort of really beginning to talk in depth about them, and the other does not. And so the policy conversation is really one-sided, not only from one candidate in the race, that being of Hillary Clinton, but then also there are the think tanks and sort of other policy that are having these conversations about and critiquing the individual policies or those that exist, but there's really no in-depth dialogue about it. And that's a little frustrating for me as a voter, because both, at least for the candidate on my side, is so very well known. I want to see her be a little, sort of be the policy wonk I know that she is. Mm-hmm. However, I do know from a political standpoint that that's not going to win much votes. Mm-hmm. You'll win me over and you'll win people like me over. But in the atmosphere, the political atmosphere that we are in right now, the detailed policy discussions probably won't begin to happen until we get to the debate.
Right, and it's almost better at this point to be more careful with what you put out there. What do you see right now, Richard?
Well, look, there has been a policy debate, and here I'm going to make it clear. We know that Hillary Clinton stands on the side in terms when it comes to the economy. Her answer is raising taxes. We know that Donald Trump is saying cut regulation and reduce taxes. Right now we have 7 tax brackets as low as from 10% to 40%. Donald Trump's maximum tax bracket will be 33%. Okay, and the middle tax bracket will be 25%. So we're putting more money back in the economy. That's Donald Trump's plan. Hillary Clinton's plan is to take money out of the economy and give it to government. When we talk about foreign policy, we have to remember, Hillary Clinton's been part of an administration that has, one, signed on to the Iran deal, which basically will make Iran nuclear in a couple years, paid a ransom to Iran for hostages, that was $400 million. That is part of the Hillary Clinton foreign policy strategy. And we know that Hillary Clinton was also part of, as we hear a lot, Benghazi, where we still haven't arrested anybody who was responsible for the killing of our ambassador to Libya. That's Hillary Clinton's foreign policy plan. That's what she has been part of when she was part of the Obama administration. When we look at Trump, Trump is about increasing our military that has been depleted over the years. I've served as a member of the U.S. Army. We have to have a strong military. And more importantly, we have to be a country of our word. If somebody crosses the red line, as the Syrian President Assad did when President Obama issued if you cross the red line, something will happen, we have to be prepared to do something. Hillary Clinton is part of an administration that doesn't back up what they say. And so in terms of foreign policy, we look at Donald Trump being stronger on us being of our word, and if something happens to our partners, and maybe even in Ukraine or Syria or wherever in the world, that we are going to be on our word and we are going to back up what we say by putting our military in to protect American interests here and abroad. Third, in terms of immigration,
I'm waiting for the punch. Because I'm waiting for the punchline.
There's a policy debate that takes place. In terms of immigration, Hillary Clinton's part of the Obama administration who has stopped the immigration deportation. Basically, signed an executive order, President Obama signed an executive order stopping deportation The Supreme Court had to come and stop him and overrule that. That's the part. That's what you're going to see in a Hillary Clinton administration is the carrying over of Obama administration in terms of immigration being very weak on immigration. You see Donald Trump saying, "Listen, we need to be stronger in immigration." Here's one of the reasons we need to be stronger in immigration: because our intelligence community that we depend on for information to protect this country has told us that the process when we receive people from other countries has gaps and holes in it. And what that means is that terrorists can slip in to our country if we don't fix that. Donald Trump's plan for immigration is to fix those gaps so we don't have the issues.
And that's where we get the extreme vetting phrase that he's been
That's
using,
correct.
and we'll come back to that. You're ready to respond
all right,
on a
so
few.
we have to have a reality check here. First of all, Richard St. Paul seems to have actual policy plans that his candidate does not. Because at no time have we seen any detail or dive detail from Donald Trump on any of these issues. What he has done is stand on a platform and give people nice, sweet words and fiery words of what they think they want to hear or think that they need, with no real plan of how to pay for it, no real plan of how it's actually going to be carried out. And so while individual Republicans like yourself may have specific plans and issues and policies that you want to see done, that is not what's coming from the candidate, and that is not what's coming from the person that we have before us. Second, to do these lies and to do these mistruths, which is certainly following your candidate, of saying what Hillary Clinton believes or what's presenting, he has no actual plan of how he plans to do anything except give more money to the wealthy. And so your charge that Hillary Clinton is taking money out of the economy instead of trying to put some equity in terms of how our tax plan is done, in terms of who is actually benefiting from the extremely high inequity that is happening in this country, and then using that money to raise wages, using that money to provide services to its citizens, whether that's increasing pay, whether that's childcare, whether that's education, whether that's infrastructure building that we're talking about. So your candidate can stand up and talk about all of the things he's going to do, but if he has no plan of how he's actually going to pay for it or how it's going to be implemented, how are we to believe that that he's serious about anything that he's talking about?
A brief response to that, really briefly. First of all, let's just compare. Okay, so Trump announced in Detroit his economic plan. Okay, so here's some specifics. First of all, he said, as I mentioned before, that he wants to lower the tax brackets not only for individual Americans, but the corporate tax rate, which is one of the highest in the world, at 40%.
Which would highly
let me
benefit
interrupt
who?
you. So that means that corporations, instead of going overseas to avoid paying taxes, can hopefully stay here. That's the idea. Keep jobs here. Well, look, we don't know if it's going to work, but certainly it's a step in the right direction. It's better than what we've done under the Obama administration. Secondly, the Cash for Clunkers program. We remember that, where you got money basically to buy a car to help the auto industry. That was a temporary program. If you lower people's tax bracket, if you give them more money in their pocket, that is a long-term economic plan because that money will go back into the economy. That's Trump's plan.
That is what you hope will happen. But
that's
here's
what he
the
said
thing.
in Detroit.
But
That is his plan.
But if you have a particular policy proposal, such as Hillary Clinton has proposed,
Raising
raising taxes on particular people who have not paid their fair share, right? And certainly also as we have increased benefits from the companies as they're making more money, to give tax incentives on them who actually raise wages and actually help share across the board, not only money for those top corporate folks who are getting the pay raises and experiencing all of that money, but then be able to share those benefits with their workers, which also puts more money in the economy. You're saying by hopefully that if people get more money in terms of reducing taxes, that they will hopefully bring jobs back here. We've seen that already. It doesn't work. It's not what happens. Now, at the same time, he says he's going to bring jobs back here, but at the same time, you're going to change these proposals, and we're now supposed to focus just on Americanism and just not participate in the global economy, where majority of the other countries that are participating in the global economy on a fair level, that is how their countries are experiencing increased profits, being able to help others in their country, right? So it's contradictory.
We're talking trade. I think we'll bring that up later.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm happy to move into that. Actually, that's an interesting place to go. I think a couple of things. One, I think we saw a great preview, hopefully, of what a Clinton-Trump debate in September could look like there. But you would hope that they're
Eldor and I
actually
will
as
show up for the
substantive.
debate.
Well, listen, but that's if we're debating on when we're debating policy, right? If we're debating policy, I would put Hillary Clinton's policies up against his at any time because it's going to fall flat
And
because he has no plan.
I just do the same thing because Hillary Clinton represents failed policies, more failed policies, versus Donald Trump's new ideas. That's why you see this surge in his how popular he is because of the fresh look he's taken at the economy, at immigration, at foreign policy versus what we've seen. Hillary Clinton's been here for 30 years.
Richard's hitting on an interesting theme of this election here, which is the idea of continuity versus change, right? And that will be a theme as we go forward here, which is Republicans, including the presidential nominee, tying Hillary Clinton to the last 8 years in the Obama administration, which, interestingly, because the president's approval ratings have been going up, she's been fully embracing and fully hugging in a lot of ways.
Why wouldn't you?
I'm not discussing the merits of that. I'm saying this is going to be an interesting theme.
Right. But from a Democratic candidate standpoint, and even from an economy standpoint, why wouldn't you tie your tugboat to a president who helped usher this country out of financial ruin and economic instability?
Whoa.
Well,
I'm gonna let you go.
Well, I think the interesting division there that you hit on is that there's a lot of discussion about is the economy headed in the right direction for everybody, right? And while we've certainly and the president has said that, and so has Hillary Clinton. So there's a lot of discussion about and you hit on more equity and you hit on more opportunity, and I think you did as well, Richard. And that's a big focus of this campaign is. Generally speaking, things are pretty good in this country economically. We're out of recession. We're out of, there might be some signs that we're dipping back again because there's been a prolonged period of growth. But the question is everybody, rising up? And how do you make sure that others...
And that's the key. Everybody doesn't feel that way, right? Because that's why most Americans are like Donald Trump's message about how he's painted. He's saying, listen, we've had the worst home ownership in 51 years. We've had the worst job growth since the Great Depression. That's what people are really feeling. When you listen to Hillary Clinton, it's, look, we're at the precipice of being the world's greatest economy, and people don't feel that way. That positive, gloomy, great message is not how people feel.
I do agree that there is a disconnect between the numbers and what we've seen overall in terms of the economy, which we should be proud of in terms of moving the country out of where we were into what people feel on an individual level, be it, how rent increases are, whether their wages themselves have gone up and being able to afford more, whether it be at a grocery store or being able to afford college or things of that. So there is that disconnect.
And there's a lot of agreement on that, right?
And there's agreement on that across the board, which is why, again, I think a candidate like Hillary Clinton, who has recognized that and saying, let's celebrate where we got out of, and then let's also see how we can reform and push the system so that people individually can begin to feel that. That's in increased wages, which she is firmly for. That is providing support and resources for families and for workers across the board, whether it be childcare, whether it be trying to close the wage gap, and which will keep more money in in individual pockets, as well as college education.
So in some ways,
in terms of the policies that she's proposing are overall, and sort of being able to say, I will help, the government should be able to help and provide resources. It should. This is the reason why we pay taxes. We have decided collectively as a country, we are going to put money in this pool to be able to help everyone lift up. And that is our belief. I don't know what you believe.
So let me just say, what you're hitting on, just to make this clear, is that even though Donald Trump is a bit of an outsider, we still are, it is in a lot of ways coming down to sort of a classic Republican-Democrat divide on how much government there should be, how you best raise wages and stimulate the economy. Is it ease off on regulations and sort of, in some ways, I don't know if you'd characterize it this way, but still more of a trickle-down approach?
I don't. But
okay. But maybe, some would characterize it that way. If you ease up and then you get more money flowing into the economy, versus more of a regulatory function, more of a we put money into this pool to get services and we want to increase services. And that's a fascinating choice that voters have to make.
Exactly.
Who do they have faith in?
Wait, so the worst thing a person can hear is knock, knock, hi, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. right? We all remember that. So, look, government should help in things like our common defense, laws, criminal justice system, even though that needs to be reformed, and make sure it's reformed in the sense that it's more equitable, of course. But there's certain things that government should help in terms of less regulation. I'm a small business owner. Give me the opportunity to open up my business hassle-free. In New York State, I can open up a business online. That's a step in the right direction. Give me one form versus 15 forms. Don't tax me when I'm first starting my business for the first of 5 years. Let me grow before you start asking for your portion. Things like that. So the regulation is a job killer. And that's one of the things that Trump has mentioned, that we have too much regulation. He said in his speech to Detroit, listen, when I come into office, what I'm going to propose is we put a moratorium on regulations and we review the regulations that we have that are job killers. That's an important policy point.
And I think, Ben, to your point, this is a fundamental disagreement between sort of the Republican policies and Democratic policies, where others may see, and being a small business owner myself, and we've oftentimes talked about, different regulations that have hindered us in the past. But if we look at a greater overall good of what regulation allows us to do, regulation also prevents the abuse on the housing market. Regulation also prevents abuse in terms of our financial markets. So regulation also is there to prevent this wholesale abuse in our independent or our individual systems, and protects people from big governments, from big government and from big corporations. I agree. Protects us from big governments and big corporations. And that's what we want. And so all regulation isn't bad, because if not, we wouldn't have clean drinking water and we wouldn't have electricity and the things that we have in clean air. So those things are responsible. That is what we need, right?
It's about the overregulation. I agree. The regulation is necessary, but the overregulation is what we have to be concerned about.
Again, we're able to have this conversation in this policy debate here at this table, but certainly that is not happening on a national level.
It's interesting to me, Richard, you've been referring to some of the stuff that Donald Trump has rolled out lately, and he has given a couple of policy-focused speeches.
Yes.
Very broad brush, which you might get in a candidate's stump speech at this point, and then maybe you look to their website for a more detailed plan. He says those are sort of to come on many issues, which is a little bit of a concern to some. But one of the things that I think you're really focused in here on the details of some of the general concepts that he's outlined. He's been sort of sabotaging himself when he outlines these things, but then he's not focused on them. He's tweeting about morning shows and he's railing against people. So what's going on there?
That is a point well made, right? And
As
so
a
that's
strategist,
That's why he has changed his campaign team, right? So the question is, how can you help Donald Trump stay on message by allowing him to be himself, right? Because he'll come out under Paul Manafort, which is no longer his campaign advisor, right? He has 2 new campaign advisors now. How can you come out one day, you have an economic policy, and then 2 days later you're talking about throwing a baby out of a rally, right? So the point is, keep him on message. We're talking about the economy one day, 2 days later we're talking about some details of the economy. And that whole week we're talking about the economy, we're staying on message in the way that Donald Trump can do that. And I think that's what you're seeing from his new campaign team is, we're going to allow him to be him, but stay on message. And that's going to be the key. That's going to be what's going to change his poll numbers.
And this is what further concerns me, even, in the temperament of an individual that if you're supposed to or aspiring to be the leader of America, the fact that we have to control or confine you, that you don't have enough wherewithal to stay on message, and how then do I have faith that you're able to do that in dealing with other governments? How do I know that there is faith in you dealing with different agencies and different people within our government, and dealing with the American people if you can turn it in a different direction or be distracted at any given time? And I think that temperament, in addition to the policies in the conversation we're having here, should be a major concern for anybody considering who we have as our next president.
Well, if you look at, everybody has their own individual personalities, and Donald Trump by far is not a politician. This is something that he hasn't had to deal with, especially the mainstream media, 24/7, going. And look, people like what he say. They like the fact that, and it doesn't matter, it goes across race. I've heard black people, brown people, white people say, listen, I like that he says what's on his mind. That's refreshing. It's not typical of a politician. He's not a politician.
Right.
And that's what people enjoy most about it. And his temperament has built $1 billion industry and employed tens of thousands of people. So he has the right temperament of a leader, period.
Well, that's an interesting take. I mean, I think there's questions there, and bringing up sort of the way that he's done some self-sabotage, which I don't think anybody can disagree with. And you're saying it's good that he's got some new people in to help keep him focused and to sort of bang the drum on policy issues when he rolls them out. So that's sort of a concern there on his side of things. On the Clinton side of things, you get these issues of trustworthiness, more emails coming out, things like that. And what I'm drawing a parallel here on is sort of distraction from the policy conversation, right? We're talking about policy here, and we dug in on several issues there. And now, you have these issues where Trump distracts, and there's distractions on the Clinton side. So what do you make of sort of those issues?
Yeah. What
does she need to do? How does she stay focused on policy? And to that point as well, because of what she's watching happen with poll numbers, is she receding even more? Is she sort of hiding a little bit because she's watching, oh, maybe I can take a little bit of a rose garden strategy here?
Right. Certainly, as individual voter and talking to individual voters, there is that frustration of the distraction overall in this presidential campaign, be it on the Trump side, whether it be something he said, tweeted, or did, and on Hillary Clinton's side, whether it be the continuing saga of emails and other distractions, which I think individually sometimes she feeds into and the campaign feeds into as well. There are certain statements and things that happen where it's just like, why do we go there again, right? And so I think then that begins the frustration of an individual voter. I just want to know what policies or what things will actually affect me because I'm struggling right now, or what is actually going to help me as a small business owner. And in small business on a varying level, remember, because small business varies from, that individual solo entrepreneur person
right,
all the way to someone up to like 500 million, right? And so there's a lot of leeway there, and people are concerned because I believe we are at a critical time. I know every 4 years we talk about it being a critical election. And
most important election of our lifetime, every 4 years.
And certainly as strategists,
right.
we gin that up.
Right.
But I really think this one is that one, because from our economic future, on whether or not we're going to begin to right the road of inequality in this country, because it won't just happen with this next president. It's something that's going to happen over the next 10 to 15 years. And whoever the next president is in this cycle will help to begin changing that tide, to help us determine for this country overall what policies or what changes we're going to reform to more enfranchise and right the economy.
So we only have about 5 more minutes, and I want to move to something else, but did you want to sort of comment on the Clinton side of things, the strategy, the trustworthiness?
Well, the trustworthiness is very big, and I think at this point in time, it is true that Hillary Clinton is leading in the polling. She's leading in a lot of the swing states, important states, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia. But that's, whatever. But I think that's temporary.
A lot of time left.
I think there's enough time left to turn that around. And look, the bottom line is that people feel this way right now, is that Hillary Clinton is not Trump, and that's why we're supporting her. Not that they like any of her policies. Because I can tell you that doesn't move the meter. And it doesn't move independent voters either. Independent voters are thinking to themselves, look, you're not Trump at this moment, but we do like what Trump is saying. So we're caught in the middle right now. Maybe we're going to hang out with Hillary Clinton for a while until we see what Trump does. And I think that's the bottom line. I think once we have our first debate and you see those policies being laid out, that meter's going to move. And also, in addition to that, Trump is going up on the air, which has been missing. Mm-hmm. So the organization part of the Trump campaign has been missing in terms of having a 50-state strategy of people organizing, and then also the media. Hillary Clinton's running media all over the place.
I think that's a big question ahead here is the Trump organization. I mean, I don't think
That's part of the
There's
reason.
no 50 straight state strategy
Right.
coming, right? He's got to focus on about 12, right, or 15 maybe.
And that's exactly
Yeah.
one of the important
And
states.
so-
And that's why you see some of the numbers down in those states is because you haven't rolled out an organizational plan.
And then there's a very real concern on whether that will actually happen, or whether he's going to continue to run this campaign as he's run his businesses, or whether he's run or how he's run it so far, which is focused primarily on him and his personality, and running it as a media campaign overall, and as because there is no breadcrumbs leading to on the ground operation, either from the state party operations, who don't have the money to be able to fund this on their own, and the Trump organization itself.
Yeah, I think as impressive as what he did in the primary was, it was a little bit of a trap for him, right? That it gave him such a sense of confidence in what he was doing that he didn't quite see quickly enough that he needed to change and focus on some of the ground operations and things like that.
You've seen turnover in the leadership of his campaign with Corey, and then Manafort, and then now we have Kelly.
Right. So we spent a lot of time sort of on key domestic issues. Let's just take a couple minutes on this question of sort of the Clinton continuity, globalization, sticking with allies, sticking with NATO and alliances and things like that, versus what Trump is recommending is a pretty stark change in terms of he's calling it Americanism versus globalism, American first. What does that mean, and what are we looking at in the difference there?
Sure. So really brief, what I would say is, because I know we have like a few minutes left, so what I would say, look, here's the difference. Hillary Clinton gives a speech in India, and she says, look, I don't know if we can do anything about outsourcing. And to a round of applause, because outsourcing to other countries outside the U.S. is very important, because that means they're taking jobs and money from Americans. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is saying, wait a second, let's look at some of our trade agreements. Let's look at NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Let's look at the TPP, which Hillary Clinton has supported, and say, wait, our trade deficits are too broad. We had a zero trade deficit with Mexico. Now we're up to like 60 billion. Huge in China in terms of our trade deficit. Why are American products inferior to those who are developing products elsewhere? Absolutely not. Let's start being back part of this economy.
So I think he's alarmed
Global
some allies, right? But he's also hit something, especially with this sort of populist message and this outsourcing message that has clearly resonated, and something that Bernie Sanders was also
BritX is another example too.
Right, but it also mentioned that in terms of what concerns me about this focus of Americanism, as well as that, one, we live in a much more global economy. We live in a different time, and we live in that global economy. While yes, we need to examine some of the trade deals that we have, let's also examine that some of our domestic policies allow and may give it incentives for our companies to actually outsource their work. We're small business owners. We know that if we can go to a particular company or a particular vendor that can make something for us for $1 or for $2, that's where we're going to go, because it's going to help on our bottom line, right? But we also, as Hillary Clinton
But we will
has,
pay taxes here because we can't relocate.
as Hillary Clinton has said, and is in her policies about incentivizing for those companies to remain here and to have American workers here, and change the policies so that it's not beneficial for them to go there. So I think that's it's not only doing the trade policies, but it's also our local economic policies,
Richard,
we have to change.
You don't mind, but we're going to have to leave it there. But it's great to have a substantive conversation about the issues that are at stake here. We hope the candidates will follow suit even more. We'd even touch on a whole host of issues, which we'll have to do at another point, but people should also, research those on their own. So that's all the time we have today. I'm Ben Max. On behalf of my co-hosts, L. Joy Williams and Richard St. Paul, thank you for watching this special election edition of Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Make sure you're ready to vote in the state and local primary elections September 13th and the general elections, including for president, on November 8th. Goodbye.